I woke up that morning feeling the usual weight of the day ahead, the kind of weight that settles into your shoulders when you're used to being the steady one, the quiet one, the guy who doesn't make a fuss. My name's Julian Marsh, 34 years old, and I've always been the type to keep my head down and get things done. Harper, my wife, used to call me her rock back when we first got together, her voice soft and warm like she meant it. But lately, I'd started to feel more like something she was ashamed of, a crack in the perfect picture she wanted to show the world. That morning, she was in the kitchen, stirring her coffee, her eyes darting anywhere but at me. "Julian," she said, her voice clipped, "I need you to do me a favor. Claire's birthday dinner is tonight, and I don't think you should come." I stood there, halfway through tying my work boots, the laces still loose in my hands. Claire's her younger sister, the golden girl of the family, always loud and bright and full of plans. "It's a big night," Harper went on, still not looking at me. "She's introducing her new boyfriend, and it's kind of a special thing. I just think it'd be better if you stayed home." I opened my mouth to ask why, but she cut me off before I could. "I told them you had an accident," she said, her words rushing out like she'd rehearsed them. "It's easier that way." An accident. Like I'd tripped over my own feet and couldn't be trusted around polite company. I felt my chest tighten, a slow burn creeping up my neck. My job as a janitor, it's honest work, mopping floors and fixing what's broken. It's never bothered me. I like the simplicity of it, the way it keeps my hands busy and my mind clear. But standing there, watching Harper twist her coffee spoon between her fingers, I realized it bothered her. She'd turned my life into a lie to save face. "Okay," I said, my voice flat, because what else was there to say? She didn't want me there, didn't want me next to her in front of her family, didn't want them to see the man she'd married. I finished tying my boots, grabbed my jacket, and walked out the door without another word. The air outside was cold, biting at my face as I headed to work, but it didn't cool the heat building inside me. I wasn't mad, not yet. I was just stunned, like I'd been slapped awake after years of sleepwalking through our life together. She'd asked me to stay home before, sure, for little things, a girl's night, a quick coffee with her mom, but this was different. This was Claire's big moment, and Harper had decided I didn't belong in it. I spent the day pushing a broom across the warehouse floor, the steady scrape of it against concrete keeping my thoughts from spiraling too far. I kept replaying her words. It's easier that way. Easier for who? For her? For Claire? For the boyfriend I'd never met? I pictured them all sitting around some fancy table, laughing and clinking glasses, while I sat alone in our cramped apartment. My hands tightened around the broom handle. I wasn't some dirty secret. I worked hard. I paid bills. I'd been there for Harper through every late-night rant about her family, every time she needed someone to lean on. And now she was pretending I didn't exist because, what? Because I didn't wear a suit to work? Because I smelled like cleaner instead of cologne? By the time I got home that evening, the apartment was empty. Harper had left a note on the counter, "Back late. Don't wait up." I crumpled it in my fist and tossed it in the trash. I didn't wait up. I didn't even turn on the TV. I just sat there in the dark, the silence pressing in around me, and wondered how long she'd been ashamed of me. How long I'd let her be. It wasn't about the dinner, not really. It was about the way she'd looked at me, or didn't look at me, like I was something to hide, something to explain away. I didn't argue with her that morning because I never argue. I'm not that guy. But as I sat there, staring at the wall, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, but a question. A big one. What was I to her, really? And what was I going to do about it? I didn't sleep much that night after Harper left for Claire's birthday dinner. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm the kind of guy who usually lets things roll off his back. But this stuck. The apartment felt too quiet without her. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards under my feet as I paced. I kept thinking about what she'd said, how she'd asked me to stay home, how she'd lied about an accident to keep me out of sight. It wasn't the first time she'd nudged me to the edges of her life, but it was the first time it felt like she'd pushed me right off the map. I didn't yell when she told me, didn't slam doors or throw anything. That's not me. I just nodded, grabbed my jacket, and let her have her way, same as always. But sitting there in the dark, the weight of it started to sink in, heavy and cold like a stone in my gut. I'd been quiet for her, steady for her, invisible for her, and I was tired of it. The next morning, I woke up early, the kind of early where the sky's still gray and the world hasn't quite started moving yet. Harper was still asleep, curled up on her side of the bed, her hair spilling across the pillow like nothing had changed. I didn't wake her. I made coffee, black and strong, and sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hands. I wasn't mad, not the shouting kind of mad, anyway, but I was done. Done being the guy who just takes it. I opened the banking app, the little green icon glowing on the screen, and started scrolling through the accounts. For the past 3 years, I'd been covering half the rent on her parents' lake house up north. It wasn't cheap, $600 a month, wired straight from my paycheck like clockwork. I'd set it up when her dad lost his job, back when Harper begged me to help, because family sticks together. I didn't mind then. I liked helping. It made me feel solid, useful. But now? Now it felt like I'd been paying to stay in the shadows. I tapped into the autopay settings and canceled it. Just like that. No hesitation, no second thoughts. The screen asked me to confirm, and I hit yes, without blinking. Then I moved to the next one, their internet bill. Another $80 a month I'd been footing because Harper said they couldn't afford it, and she didn't want her mom stressing about losing Wi-Fi. Canceled. Done. I kept going, line by line, cutting every tie I'd tied myself to. Claire's student loans were the last one. Harper had asked me to chip in a couple years back, just $200 a month, because Claire was struggling after college. I'd never said no, never asked for anything back. I'd just done it, month after month, because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You help their family. You carry the load. But as I sat there, staring at the numbers, I realized they'd never seen me as family. Not really. I was just the guy with the checkbook, the one they didn't even want at their table. I canceled that payment too. My finger hovered over the screen for a second, but then I pressed it, and it was gone. The account balance is updated, and I felt something lift, not much, just a little, like I'd taken a breath after holding it too long. I wasn't doing it to hurt them. I wasn't trying to start a war or get revenge. I just wanted to stop feeling like a ghost in my own life. Harper never asked where the money came from, never cared that I worked extra shifts sometimes to cover it all. She just assumed I'd keep going, keep giving, keep fading into the background so she could shine. And I'd let her. For years, I'd let her. I leaned back in the chair, the coffee going cold in my mug. The apartment was still quiet, the early light creeping through the blinds in thin, pale stripes. I thought about the lake house, those weekends we'd spend up there, me fixing the leaky sink while Harper and her mom sipped wine on the porch. I thought about Claire, how she'd smile and thank me for the help but never once asked about my day, my life, my anything. They took what I gave and didn't look twice at who was giving it. And Harper, she'd let them. She'd stood there and let them see me as less, all while I poured myself into keeping them afloat. I didn't tell her what I'd done when she woke up. She stumbled into the kitchen around 9, rubbing her eyes, muttering about how late the dinner ran. It was fun, she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. Claire's boyfriend seems nice. You didn't miss much? I just nodded, watching her move around the kitchen like everything was normal. She didn't ask how my night was. Didn't notice the way I was looking at her, the way I was starting to see her differently. I kept my mouth shut, because that's what I do. I stay quiet. But inside, something was building. Not loud, not explosive, just steady. I'd stopped the payments, and that was the first step. The first time in a long time I'd done something for me instead of for her. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the weight of being invisible, the weight of being the guy she didn't want anyone to see. I finished my coffee and rinsed the mug in the sink, the water running cold over my hands. Harper was still talking, something about the cake they'd had, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking about what came next. I didn't know yet, not exactly, but I knew I wasn't going back to the way things were. I'd spent too long in silence, too long letting her decide what I was worth. And as I stood there, the faucet dripping, I realized I didn't need her to tell me who I was. I didn't need any of them to. I'd been their rock, sure, but I was done crumbling for them. The night of Claire's birthday dinner rolled around, and I stayed home like Harper asked. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the type to push back when someone draws a line. I usually just step behind it and keep my mouth shut. So there I was, alone in our little apartment, the walls feeling closer than usual, the quiet heavier than I liked. Harper had left around 6, her hair done up nice, wearing that blue dress she saves for special occasions. She'd kissed my cheek quick, said, "Thanks for understanding." And then she was gone, the door clicking shut behind her. I didn't understand, not really, but I didn't say that. I just let her go, same as always. I made myself some pasta, nothing fancy, just spaghetti with sauce from a jar, and sat on the couch with a fork in my hand, the TV off, the room dark except for the kitchen lights spilling in. I wasn't mad yet. I was just there, chewing slow, waiting for something to make sense. I kept picturing them at the restaurant. Harper, Claire, her parents, this new boyfriend I didn't know. I wondered what they were saying about me, if they even bothered to bring up the accident Harper had invented. Did they nod and move on, or did they laugh about it, relieved I wasn't there to drag things down? I stabbed at the pasta, twirling it around the fork, my stomach tight. I've never been the guy who needs to be the center of attention. I like my job, janitor at a warehouse, because it's steady, simple. I clock in, clean up, clock out. No one bothers me, and I don't bother them. But sitting there, the sauce cooling on my plate, I started to feel like maybe I'd been too okay with that. Too okay with being the one nobody noticed. Around 8:15, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, loud enough to jolt me out of my thoughts. I figured it was Harper checking in, maybe saying she'd be late, but the screen showed Lily's name, Harper's cousin. She's younger, loud in a fun way, always dragging me into conversations at family stuff when no one else bothered. It was a video call, which threw me off. I almost let it ring out, my thumb hovering over the decline button, but something made me pick up. Curiosity, maybe, or just boredom. I hit accept, and there they were, all of them, crammed into the frame. Harper, Claire, her parents, a guy I didn't recognize. The restaurant was bright, fancy, with white tablecloths and candles flickering. Laughter spilled through the speaker, wine glasses clinking, decorations hanging in the background like this was some big celebration I didn't belong to. My face popped up in the corner of the screen, small and out of place, and for a second, no one noticed me. Lily must have propped her phone up on the table, forgetting it was on. I should have hung up. Should have put the phone down and gone back to my pasta. But I didn't. I watched, my grip tightening on the phone, as Harper leaned over to say something to Claire, her smile wide and easy. She looked happy, happier than she'd been with me in a while. Claire was laughing, her head thrown back, her new boyfriend grinning beside her. He was tall, dark hair, the kind of guy who looks like he belongs at a table like that. I felt my chest hollow out, not because I wanted to be there, but because I realized how much Harper didn't want me to be. Then it happened. The boyfriend, Damon, I'd learn later, leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Julian? Hey, boss." The words hit like a punch, sharp and sudden, and the whole table went still. Harper's head snapped toward the phone, her eyes wide, her face draining of color. Claire blinked, her mouth half open, like she didn't get it. "Boss?" she said, her voice small, confused. Damon straightened up, still grinning, oblivious to the tension starting to choke the air. "Yeah," he said, loud enough for me to hear every word clear as day. "Julian's one of the co-founders at Corvia Systems. We've been rolling out the logistics AI interface I told you about. He's kind of a big deal there." I didn't say anything. I just sat there, the phone warm in my hand, watching it all unfold. Harper's jaw clenched tight, her lips pressing into a thin line. Claire's parents turned to look at her, then at the screen, their faces shifting from confusion to something else, shock, maybe, or embarrassment. Lily grabbed the phone, fumbling with it, muttering, "Oops, didn't mean to," but it was too late. The truth was out, raw and messy, and I could see it hitting them all like a brick. I wasn't just a janitor. That's what they thought, what Harper let them think. The janitor gig was a cover, something I did to keep my hands busy, to stay grounded while I built something bigger. Corvia Systems was mine. Well, half mine. Me and my buddy Mark started it years ago, back when we were just two guys with a laptop and a dream. Now it's a multi-million-dollar tech firm, and I'm the guy behind the curtain, not mopping floors but designing systems that keep warehouses like the one I work at running smooth. Harper didn't know. She never asked. She saw the dirty boots, the plain clothes, and decided that was all I was. And she'd sold that story to her family, to Claire, to everyone. I hung up before anyone could say more. My thumb hit the red button, and the screen went black, the silence rushing back and around me. My pasta was cold now, the plate still half full, but I didn't care. I pushed it aside and leaned back on the couch, my heart thudding slow and steady in my chest. Damon's voice echoed in my head, "Hey, boss." And I almost laughed, but it didn't come out. Harper had spent years hiding me, ashamed of the man she thought I was, and now the guy dating her sister had blown it all wide open. I didn't plan it. Didn't want it, even. But there it was, the truth, sitting there like a spilled drink on that fancy white tablecloth. I wondered what she'd say when she got home. If she'd try to explain, or just pretend it didn't happen. I wondered if she'd look at me different now, or if she'd just find a new way to keep me small. But as I sat there, the apartment dark and still, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her decide that for me anymore. I sat there on the couch, my phone still warm in my hand after I hung up on Lily's video call. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the guy who likes drama. I'd rather sweep it under the rug than deal with it. But that night, after Damon dropped the truth about me being a co-founder at Corvia Systems, there was no sweeping it away. The pasta I'd made was cold on the coffee table, the fork stuck in it like I'd forgotten what I was doing halfway through. I hadn't. I just couldn't move, couldn't think past the way Harper's face had gone white, the way Claire's mouth had dropped open, the way the whole room had frozen like someone hit pause on their perfect little party. Damon's voice, "Hey, boss," kept ringing in my ears, loud and clear, and I could still see the shock rippling across their faces. It wasn't funny, not really, but part of me wanted to laugh at how fast it all fell apart. I'd never told Harper about Corvia. Not the full story, anyway. She knew I worked as a janitor, saw me leave every morning in my old jacket and boots, assumed that was all there was to me. I didn't correct her. Didn't feel the need to. The tech stuff, building logistics AI, running a company worth millions, that was mine, something I kept separate because I liked the quiet of it. The janitor job was real enough. I took shifts at the warehouse to test our systems, see how they worked on the ground. It kept me honest, kept me connected to what we were making. But to Harper, it was just a dirty job, something to brush off when her family asked what I did. "Oh, Julian cleans up," she'd say, her voice light, like it was a joke. I let her think that because I didn't need her to see me as anything else. Until now. Now she didn't have a choice. The silence in the apartment was thick, pressing down on me as I replayed that moment in my head. Claire whispering, "Boss," like she couldn't wrap her mind around it. Harper's eyes locking onto the phone, wide and panicked, like she'd been caught stealing. Her parents turning to her, their faces tight with questions they didn't ask out loud. And Damon, grinning like it was no big deal, like he hadn't just smashed their whole world with 3 words. I didn't say anything back there on the call. I didn't have to. They saw me, really saw me, for the first time, and it wasn't because I wanted them to. It was because the lie Harper built couldn't hold up anymore. She'd told them I was nothing, a guy who mopped floors and stayed out of the way, and now they knew she was wrong. I wondered what that felt like for her, having her story crack open in front of everyone she cared about impressing. I got up and dumped the pasta in the trash, the plate clattering in the sink louder than I meant it to. My hands were steady, but inside, something was churning, not anger, not yet, just a slow, heavy realization. Harper didn't just hide me from them, she hid me from herself. She never asked about my day, never wondered why I'd come home late some nights or why I'd stare at my laptop for hours. She saw what she wanted to see, a quiet husband who didn't fit her shiny life, and I let her because I thought that's what love was. Giving her what she needed, even if it meant shrinking myself down to fit in her pocket. But watching her face on that call, the way she flinched when Damon said my name, I knew it wasn't love. It was convenience. I was easy to explain away until I wasn't. The clock on the wall ticked past 9 o'clock, then 9:30, and I stayed where I was, leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. I could have called her, demanded answers, but what would that change? She'd come home eventually, and we'd have to face it then. For now, I just let it sit there, the truth hanging in the air like dust after a storm. I thought about Damon, good kid, sharp, one of the best on our team at Corvia. He'd been talking about Claire for weeks, excited to meet her family, never knowing I was part of it. I liked him, respected him, and now he'd accidentally lit a match under everything Harper had tried to keep neat and tidy. I didn't blame him. He didn't know the mess he was stepping into. But Harper, she knew. She'd built this lie, brick by brick, and I'd handed her the mortar without even realizing it. I thought about the past 3 years, all the times I'd stayed quiet when she brushed me off. Family dinners where I'd sit at the end of the table, nodding along while they talked about Claire's latest adventure or her mom's new decorating project. I'd pay for half the lake house rent, fix their leaky pipes, send money for Claire's loans, and they'd smile and say thanks like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Harper never corrected them, never said, "Hey, Julian's more than that." She let them see me as the help, the guy who didn't matter, and I went along with it because I didn't want to rock the boat. But now the boat was sinking, and I wasn't the one who'd punched the hole in it. The front door creaked open around 10:15, and I heard her footsteps, soft and careful, like she wasn't sure what she'd find. "Julian," she called, her voice small. I didn't answer right away. I stayed where I was, arms crossed, watching her step into the kitchen. She looked different, tired, her makeup smudged under her eyes, her hair not so perfect anymore. "You're up," she said, setting her purse on the counter. I nodded, waiting. She fidgeted with her keys, her fingers twisting them over and over. "Lily didn't mean to call you," she started, her words rushing out. "It was an accident." "I didn't know," she stopped, her eyes flicking up to mine, then away. "I didn't know he worked for you." That's what she said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Just, "I didn't know," like that made it okay. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I'd married crumbling under the weight of her own excuses. "You didn't know because you never asked," I said, my voice low, steady. She flinched, but I didn't stop. "You decided who I was, Harper. And you were wrong." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands dropping to her sides. The room went quiet again, the truth sitting there between us, heavy and hard. I didn't yell. Didn't need to. She'd heard me, maybe for the first time, and that was enough. For now. I stood there in the kitchen, watching Harper fumble with her keys after she came home from Claire's dinner. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the guy who picks fights. I'd rather fix what's broken than break it more. But that night, after Damon spilled the truth about me being a co-founder at Corvia Systems, something inside me shifted. Harper's excuse, "I didn't know he worked for you," hung in the air like smoke, and I'd answered her with the plain truth. She never asked. She stood there, her blue dress wrinkled from the long night, her eyes darting to the floor, and I could see her trying to piece together something to say. I didn't give her the chance to spin it. I turned, walked to the living room, and left her standing there. My phone was still on the couch where I'd dropped it after the call, and when I picked it up, it lit up with her name. She was calling me from 10 feet away. I let it ring, the buzz filling the quiet, then watched it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. A text this time. "Please pick up. I'm sorry. I didn't know he worked for you. I was trying to protect you." Protect me. That word hit me like a slap, sharp and stinging. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over it, the glow lighting up my face in the dark. Protect me from what? From her family? From their judgment? From the life she'd decided I didn't fit into? I set the phone face down on the coffee table, the message unanswered, and grabbed a glass from the cabinet. I poured myself a drink, whiskey, just a splash, enough to steady my hands, and sat back down. The apartment was still, the kind of still that feels loud, and I let my mind run over it all. She didn't know Damon worked for me because she didn't know me. Not really. She saw the janitor boots, the quiet nods, the way I didn't push back, and she built a story around that. A story where I was small, simple, someone to tuck away when the lights got too bright. But I wasn't that guy, not all of me, anyway, and she'd never bothered to look deeper. The phone kept buzzing, little jolts against the wood, and I ignored it. Another text, "Julian, please." I didn't mean it like that. Then another, "Can we talk?" I didn't pick it up. I sipped the whiskey, the burn sliding down my throat, and thought about how long I'd let this go. 3 years married, 5 together, and I'd spent most of it bending for her. I paid for her parents' lake house, covered Claire's bills, stayed home when she asked, all because I thought that's what you do, support the person you love. But support's a two-way street, and Harper had been walking it alone, leaving me on the side with my hands empty. She didn't protect me. She protected herself all from having to explain me, from having to stand next to me and say, "This is my husband, and I'm proud of him." She didn't say that because she wasn't. Not until Damon opened his mouth and made me someone worth seeing. I leaned back, the couch creaking under me, and closed my eyes. The whiskey glass sat cold in my hand, half empty now, and I could hear her moving in the kitchen, soft steps, the clink of her keys hitting the counter again. She didn't come in, didn't try to face me. Maybe she knew I wasn't ready to hear her, or maybe she didn't know what to say. Either way, the space between us felt wider than it ever had, a gap I hadn't noticed growing until now. I thought about the dinner, how she'd laughed on that call, how easy she looked without me there to weigh her down. I thought about how she'd lied about an accident, turned me into some clumsy fool who couldn't show up, all to keep her family from asking questions. Questions she didn't want to answer because she didn't respect the answers. The phone buzzed one more time, and I flipped it over. I messed up. "I see that now. Please don't shut me out." I read it twice, the words blurring a little. and set the phone back down. She messed up, sure, but it wasn't just about tonight. It was about every night, every day, every time she looked at me and saw less than I was. I finished the whiskey, the last drop bitter on my tongue, and got up to rinse the glass. The sink was still full of dishes, my pasta plate, her coffee mug from the morning, and I left them there. I wasn't cleaning up for her tonight. I wasn't doing anything for her tonight. I walked past the kitchen, past where she was standing with her arms crossed, staring at the floor, and went to the bedroom. "I'm going to bed," I said, my voice flat, not looking back. She didn't follow. I lay there in the dark, the sheets cool against my skin, and stared at the ceiling. The truth wasn't just about Corvaya, about me being more than a janitor. It was about her, about how she'd decided I wasn't worth standing beside unless someone else said I was. She didn't call me to apologize for lying. She called because Damon changed the game, because now I wasn't just the guy she could hide. I wasn't mad, not the loud, shouting kind of mad, but I was done pretending it didn't hurt, done pretending I didn't see it. She'd spent years building a wall between us, brick by brick, and I'd handed her the tools to do it. But now I was on the other side, looking at it, and I didn't know if I wanted to climb back over. The bed felt too big without her, even though I didn't want her there right then. I rolled onto my side, my back to her empty spot, and thought about what protect really meant. To me, it was showing up, being there, taking care of what mattered. To her, it was keeping me out of sight, safe from her world, like I was something fragile or something shameful. I didn't need that kind of protection. I'd built a company from nothing, worked nights and weekends to make it real, and I didn't need her to shield me from anything. What I needed, what I'd always needed, was her to see me. Not the janitor, not the co-founder, just me. And she hadn't. Not until the room went quiet and the truth hit like a brick. I closed my eyes, the buzz of her text still echoing in my head, and decided I wasn't answering. Not tonight. Maybe not tomorrow. Because this wasn't about her anymore. It was about me figuring out what I deserved. I woke up the next morning with the bed still empty beside me, the sheets on Harper's side untouched. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the type to dwell on what's gone wrong. I'd rather move forward than sit in the mess. But that morning, after the fallout from Claire's dinner, I couldn't shake the weight of it. Harper had slept on the couch, or maybe not at all. I didn't check. I'd heard her moving around in the night, quiet steps and the occasional creak of the floor, but I stayed in the bedroom, the door shut, letting the silence do its work. Her text from last night sat unanswered on my phone, a string of apologies and pleas I didn't want to read again. I got up, pulled on a shirt, and made coffee, the routine keeping my hands busy while my mind churned. The kitchen was dim, the early light barely cutting through the blinds, and I stood there with the mug warming my palms, thinking about what came next. My phone pinged again, but it wasn't Harper this time. It was an email from Damon, the guy who'd turned the dinner upside down without even meaning to. Subject line, apologies. I opened it, leaning against the counter, the coffee steaming beside me. "Hey, Julian," it started. "I didn't know you were Claire's brother-in-law. I feel like an idiot for how that went down last night. Hope I didn't mess things up too bad. Also, I ended it with Claire. Couldn't stay with someone who'd judge people like that over money. Respect, man. See you at work." I read it twice, the words sinking in slow and steady. Damon was a good kid, sharp, honest, one of the few at Corvaya who didn't kiss up to me just because I was the boss. I liked that about him. And now he'd walked away from Claire because he saw through the same crap I was starting to see. I didn't reply, not yet, but I respected him more for it. He didn't owe me an apology, but he'd given one anyway. I was still holding the phone when it rang, the screen flashing Harper's mom's name, Ellen. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Maybe I wanted to hear what she'd say, how she'd spin it. "Julian," she said when I answered, her voice cold and clipped, like she was talking to a stranger. "I heard everything. From Claire, from Harper. You made her look like a fool last night." I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, my jaw tightening. Me. I'd made Harper look like a fool. Not Harper, who'd lied about me having an accident. Not Harper, who'd hidden me like I was something to be ashamed of. Me. The guy who wasn't even there. "Ellen," I said, keeping my voice even. "I didn't do anything. I wasn't at the dinner. You know that." She huffed, a sharp sound through the line. "You could have told us who you were. All this time, letting us think." She stopped, like she didn't want to finish the thought. I didn't say anything back. Didn't argue. Just let her sit with it. She hung up after a long pause, the call cutting off with a soft beep, and I set the phone down, staring at it. Her words stuck with me, though, not because they were true, but because they showed me something. They thought I owed them an explanation, like I'd been tricking them by keeping quiet. But I hadn't. I'd just lived my life, worked my job, paid their bills, stayed out of their way, and they decided I was less because of it. Harper's family didn't care who I was. They cared what I looked like to other people. And when Damon blew that up, they didn't turn on Harper for lying. They turned on me for not fitting their story. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness matching the taste in my mouth, and thought about the lake house, the internet, Claire's loans, all those auto pays I'd canceled yesterday. They'd figure it out soon, probably already had, and I wondered what Ellen would say then. Probably that I was petty, selfish, cutting them off like that. But I wasn't. I was just done giving to people who took me for granted. Harper came out of the living room then, her hair messy, her eyes red like she hadn't slept. She stopped in the doorway, wrapping her arms around herself. "You're up," she said, her voice small. I nodded, not looking at her, just stirring my coffee even though it didn't need it. "Your mom called," I said, keeping it simple. She flinched, her shoulders hunching. "What did she say?" she asked. "That I made you look bad." Harper's face crumpled a little, but she didn't argue. "I didn't mean for this," she said instead, stepping closer. "I didn't know it'd turn out like this." I set the mug down, finally meeting her eyes. "You didn't know because you didn't want to," I said. "You didn't want me there, Harper. You didn't want them to see me. That's on you." She opened her mouth, then closed it, tears welling up. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I see that now." I didn't say anything back, just watched her, waiting to see if she'd keep going, but she didn't. She just stood there, looking lost. I turned away, grabbing my jacket from the chair. "I'm going out," I said, pulling it on. "Where?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Just out," I said, because I didn't know her more than that. I walked past her, out the door, and into the cool morning air. My truck was parked down the street, and I climbed in, starting it up with a rumble. I didn't have a plan, just needed to move, to think. I drove past the warehouse where I worked my janitor shifts, past the Corvia office downtown, past the life I'd built while Harper looked the other way. The pretenses were gone now. All the little lies she'd told herself and her family collapsing under the weight of the truth. I wasn't hiding anymore. Not from her, not from them, not from myself. And as I turned onto the highway, the city fading behind me, I realized I didn't care what they thought. Not Ellen, not Claire, not even Harper. I was done carrying their expectations, done letting them decide my worth. The road stretched out ahead, open and quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I drove for a while that morning, the truck's engine humming steady under me as I left the city behind. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the kind of guy who runs from problems. I usually face them head-on, quiet but firm. But after Harper's mom called, blaming me for her looking bad, and after seeing Harper standing there in the kitchen, all teary and small, I needed air. I didn't know where I was going, just followed the highway, the trees blurring past, the sky gray and heavy like it might rain. The night before still sat in my chest, tight and sharp, Damon's words at the dinner tearing through everything Harper had tried to keep neat. She'd come home, try to talk, but I'd shut her out, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't know what to say. Now, with the road stretching out, I could think. I could feel the pieces settling, figuring out what I wanted next. I got back to the apartment that weekend, Saturday, late afternoon, the light fading fast. Harper was there, waiting. I'd spent the last couple days driving, sleeping in the truck one night, grabbing coffee at gas stations, just letting the distance clear my head. When I walked in, she was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up, a mug in her hands. She didn't look mad or sad, just tired, like the fight had drained out of her. The keys clinked as she set them on the counter, slow and careful, like she was afraid to break something. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Can we talk?" I stopped in the doorway, my jacket still on, my hands in my pockets. I didn't want to talk. Not yet, but I nodded anyway, because part of me knew we had to. I sat in the armchair across from her, not the couch, keeping that space between us. She took a breath, her fingers tightening around the mug. "I never meant to lie," she said. "Not really. I was scared." "Scared of what?" I asked, my voice low, steady. She looked down at the mug. her hair falling over her face. That you wouldn't fit, she said. My family, they're all about appearances. Claire's got her big dreams. My mom's got her perfect house. My dad's got his stories. And you're quiet. You don't show off. I thought they'd look at you and see less. I didn't want that for you. I stared at her, the words sinking in slow. She wasn't lying. Not now, anyway. I could see it in her eyes, the way they flickered with something real. But it didn't make it better. You never asked if I cared, I said, leaning forward, my elbows on my knees. You decided I didn't fit. You didn't give me a chance to stand there and be me. You just hid me instead. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. I know, she said. I see that now. I was wrong. I sat back, my hands resting on the arms of the chair, and let that sit there. She was wrong. Yeah, she was. But it wasn't just about the dinner, or the lie about the accident, or even Damon calling me out. It was about years of her looking past me, seeing what she wanted instead of what was there. I let her do it, stayed quiet, paid the bills, kept my head down, because I thought that's what she needed. But she didn't need me. She needed the version of me she'd made up, the one she could tuck away when it wasn't convenient. What do I do now? She asked, her voice breaking the silence. She looked up at me, her eyes wet, searching. I didn't have an easy answer. I didn't know if I had any answer. You learn to live without me, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Her face crumpled, but I didn't take it back. I stood up, walked to the bedroom, and shut the door behind me. The room was dark, the blinds still closed from the morning, and I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands clasped between my knees. I didn't mean it like we were done. Not yet, not for sure, but I meant it like something had to change. I couldn't keep being the guy she leaned on only when it suited her. I'd spent too long making myself small, fitting into her life instead of living mine. Out there on the road, I'd felt it, the space, the freedom, the chance to be more than her quiet husband. I didn't hate her. I didn't even want to leave her, not right then. But I needed her to see me, really see me, and I didn't know if she could. The door stayed shut, and she didn't knock. I heard her moving around out there, soft steps, the clink of her mug in the sink, and then it went quiet. Maybe she was thinking too, figuring out what she wanted. Maybe she was just waiting for me to come back out and fix it. But I wasn't ready to fix anything. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, the shadows shifting as the last of the daylight slipped away. Her words kept playing in my head. I was scared you wouldn't fit. It wasn't about me fitting with her family, it was about her fitting with them. She'd built her life around their approval, their polished picture, and I was the piece that didn't match. I tried to match, though, paid for their lake house, helped Claire, stayed out of the way. I'd done it all without asking for anything back, because I thought that's what love looked like. But love doesn't hide you. Love doesn't lie about you. Love doesn't wait until someone else says you're worth it to stand by you. Harper hadn't done that. She'd waited until Damon's voice cut through the noise, until the truth forced her to look at me. I rolled onto my side, the pillow cool against my face, and closed my eyes. The visit was too late, not because I didn't want to hear her, but because it didn't change what she'd done. She could say she was sorry, could cry and promise to try harder, but it didn't erase the years I'd spent invisible to her. I didn't know what we'd do tomorrow or the day after. I didn't know if we'd talk again, or if I'd pack a bag and go. But I knew I wasn't going back to the way it was. I'd given her too much already, my time, my money, my quiet, and I was done. The door stayed shut, the apartment stayed silent, and I let myself rest, just for a little while, in the space I'd finally claimed for myself. I woke up Sunday morning with the bedroom still dark, the blinds blocking out the world beyond the window. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the guy who chases big moments. I've always been fine with the small ones, the steady ones. But after shutting the door on Harper last night, after telling her she'd have to learn to live without me, I felt something new. Not loud or flashy, just solid, like I'd finally put my feet down on ground that was mine. She hadn't knocked, hadn't pushed, and when I got up, the apartment was quiet, no sign of her on the couch, no note, just her mug in the sink from the night before. Maybe she'd gone to her mom's, or Claire's, or just out to think. I didn't know, and for once, I didn't feel like I had to figure it out. I made coffee, the same black brew I always do, and sat at the kitchen table, letting the steam curl up in front of me. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was mine. That Monday, I went to work, not the warehouse, but the Corvia office downtown. I'd been dodging it for too long, showing up in my janitor gear to test systems, keeping my head down even there. But that morning, I put on a clean shirt, a jacket that didn't smell like cleaner, and walked into the building like I belonged. Because I did. I built this place with Mark, my partner, from a couple laptops in a basement to a glass-walled office with a team of 50. People nodded at me as I passed, some saying, "Morning, Julian," others just watching, curious maybe, because I didn't usually come in like this. I didn't hide anymore. At the meeting that day, I sat at the head of the table, not off to the side like I used to. Mark raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. He knew me well enough to let it be. When someone called me co-founder, I didn't brush it off with a laugh or a shrug. I nodded and said, "Yeah, that's me." It felt good, simple, but good. After work, I didn't go back to the apartment. Not right away. I drove to a place I'd seen online, a new building a few miles out, all bright walls and hardwood floors, the kind of spot that didn't feel like it was hiding anything. I'd been thinking about it for a while, even before the dinner blew up, but I hadn't acted. Now I did. The realtor met me there, a guy named Tom with a firm handshake and a quick smile. "You looking for a fresh start?" he asked as we walked through the empty rooms. I didn't answer, just looked around, the big windows letting in light, the quiet corners, the space that didn't carry anyone else's weight. "Something like that," I said finally. By the end of the hour, I'd signed the papers. My own place. No lake house rent, no internet bills for Harper's parents, no loans for Claire, just mine. I didn't tell Harper. Didn't need to. This wasn't about her anymore. I moved in that week, bit by bit. A mattress first, then a table, a couple chairs. I didn't take much from the apartment, just my clothes, my laptop, a box of books I'd kept stacked in the closet. Harper wasn't there when I packed. She'd been gone since Sunday, leaving a note that said, "Staying with Mom for a few days." I didn't call her, didn't text. I just kept going, setting up the new place with the kind of quiet focus I'd always had. The first morning I woke up there, the sun came through the windows, hitting the hardwood in warm stripes, and I made coffee in a kitchen that didn't have her mug in the sink. It was simple, bare walls, a single chair at the table, but it was enough. More than enough. I sat there, the mug hot in my hands, and felt the difference. No one was asking me to shrink, to pay, to stay out of sight. I could breathe here. Work got easier too. I stopped taking the janitor shifts, not because I didn't like them, but because I didn't need them anymore. I'd started them to keep my hands in the game, to see how our systems worked from the ground up, but now I could see it from the top. Damon came by my office that week, his face a little sheepish after his email. "Hey, boss," he said, leaning in the doorway. "You good?" I nodded, setting down a stack of papers. "Yeah, you." He shrugged. "Better now." Claire wasn't who I thought. I didn't push. He didn't need to explain. "You did me a favor," I said instead, and he grinned, quick and easy, before heading back to his desk. I meant it. He'd cracked open the lie without even trying, and now I was standing taller because of it. The day stretched into weeks, and I settled into the new place. I bought a couch, nothing fancy, just something to sit on, and a lamp that threw soft light across the room at night. I started cooking again, real food, not just pasta from a jar, steaks, potatoes, things I hadn't bothered with in a while. I'd sit at the table, the plate in front of me, and eat slow, tasting it, not rushing to clean up or move on. It was mine, my time, my space, my life. I didn't hear from Harper much, just a text now and then. "Can we talk soon?" I didn't answer. Not because I was mad, but because I wasn't ready. I was still figuring out who I was without her shadow over me, without her family's weight pulling me down. One night, I stood at the window, looking out at the city lights blinking in the distance. I thought about the old me, the guy who'd nod and smile, who'd pay the bills and stay quiet, who'd let Harper decide what I was worth. He was gone. Not dead, just left behind. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone now, not to her, not to her mom, not to Claire. I'd spent years shrinking myself, thinking that's what made me strong, but it didn't. Letting go did. Taking this apartment, walking into work like I owned it, because I did, that's what made me strong. I turned away from the window, the room quiet around me, and felt it. Self-worth, real and steady, not tied to anyone else's eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't waiting. I was just me, and that was enough. I was sitting at my new table one evening, a plate of chicken and rice in front of me, when the mail came. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the guy who lingers on the past. I'd rather keep moving, keep building. But that night, a few weeks after I'd settled into my own place, something pulled me back. The envelope was plain, white, with my name scratched out in Claire's messy handwriting. I hadn't heard from her since the dinner, since Damon ended things and the whole mess with Harper's family unraveled. I set my fork down, wiped my hands on a napkin, and opened it, the paper crinkling under my fingers. It was a letter, handwritten, 2 pages, the ink smudged in spots like she'd taken her time with it. I leaned back in the chair, the lamp casting a soft glow over the words, and started reading. "Julian," it began. "I don't know if you'll read this, but I hope you do. I owe you an apology more than that, really, but it's a start. I've been thinking about that night, about what happened at my birthday dinner, and I can't stop feeling like I messed up. Not just because of Damon, though that's part of it, but because of you. Harper always talked about you like, I don't know, like you were this quiet guy who didn't care about much. Humble husband, she'd say, and I'd laugh, thinking it was cute or something. I didn't know who you really were. I didn't ask. And when Damon said you were his boss, that you're some big deal at Corvaya, I didn't believe it at first. It didn't fit the picture I had. But it wasn't my picture that was wrong, it was me. I judged you, and I'm sorry." I stopped there, the paper resting on the table, and took a sip of water from the glass beside me. Claire's words weren't a surprise, not exactly. I'd known how they saw me, how Harper had painted me for them. The humble husband bit stung, though, more than I expected. I could hear her saying it, her voice light and teasing, like it was a joke we were all in on. Except I wasn't laughing. I never had been. I kept reading, my eyes tracing the uneven lines. "I lost Damon because of it," she wrote. "He didn't like how I acted, how I didn't stick up for you when Harper made that accident excuse. He said he couldn't be with someone who cared more about what people think than who they are. He's right. I didn't see it then, but I do now. I looked at you and saw what Harper told me to see, not what was there. That's on me." The honesty in it hit me, not hard, not like a punch, but steady, like a hand on my shoulder. Claire wasn't wrong. She'd laughed at Harper's comments, nodded along when her mom brushed me off, taken the money I sent for her loans without a second thought. But she wasn't the only one. They all had, Harper's parents, her friends, everyone who'd smiled at me like I was a stray they'd let in the door. I'd let them, too, staying quiet, keeping my life at Corvaya separate, thinking it didn't matter what they thought. But it did. Not because I needed their approval, but because it showed me what Harper had been doing all along, shaping me into something small, something safe, something she could control. I turned the page, the paper creasing under my thumb. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she went on. "I don't even know if you should. But I wanted you to know I see you now. Not the janitor, not the guy Harper talked about, but you, Julian. The guy who built something big, who didn't need to brag about it. I wish I'd seen it sooner. I wish I'd asked. Damon did. He talked about you all the time, how you're smart, how you care about the work. I didn't listen until it was too late. I'm not asking for anything back. Just wanted to say I'm sorry, and I hope you're okay." She signed it simply Claire, no flourish, no extra words, just her name in that same messy scrawl. I folded the letter neat and set it on the table, my food cold now, the rice sticking to the plate. I didn't feel angry reading it, not at her. Anyway, Claire was young, caught up in her family's world, and she'd bought the story Harper sold. I couldn't hate her for that. She'd lost something, Damon, and she'd owned up to why. That took guts, more than I'd expected from her. I got up, took the plate to the sink, and rinsed it slow, the water running over my hands. The letter stayed where it was, a quiet weight in the room, and I thought about what it meant. Not just her words, but the fact she'd written them. She didn't have to. She could have let it fade, let me stay the guy in the background of her life, but she didn't. She reached out, and that said something. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a box from the closet, one I hadn't unpacked yet, just odds and ends from the old place, and slid the letter inside. I didn't need to keep it out, didn't need to stare at it, but I wasn't throwing it away either. It was a piece of this, a marker of where I'd been and where I was going. I didn't hate Claire, not before, not now. I didn't need her sorry, didn't need her to see me, because I was seeing myself. That's what mattered. The janitor, the co-founder, the husband, they were all me, and I wasn't splitting them apart anymore. Harper had tried to pick one, the one that fit her story, and Claire had gone along with it. But that chapter was closed now, shut tight like the box I slid back into the closet. I stood there, the apartment quiet around me, the hardwood cool under my feet. Outside, the city hummed. Cars, lights, life moving on, and I felt steady in it. Claire's letter wasn't a weight to carry. It was a door I didn't need to open again. I'd spent too long waiting for people to see me. Harper, her family, even myself, and now I didn't have to. I walked back to the kitchen, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat by the window, the night stretching out beyond the glass. The past was there, in that box, in those words, but it wasn't mine to hold on to. I'd let it go, not with anger, not with regret, just with the calm of knowing I didn't need their validation anymore. I was enough, always had been, and that was the end of it. I was sitting in my new apartment one night, the lamp throwing a warm circle of light over the couch where I'd settled with a book. My name's Julian Marsh, and I'm not the guy who looks back much. I've always been about the next step, the next day. But that night, a few months after moving out, after Claire's letter and the quiet that followed, my phone buzzed on the table. It was Harper. One last message, short and simple, popping up on the screen like a ghost I thought I'd left behind. I still love you. I see it now. Can we try again? I stared at it, the words glowing in the dim room, my thumb resting on the edge of the phone. The book stayed open in my lap, the pages still, and I let the silence sit there with me, heavy but not uncomfortable. I didn't answer, didn't type anything back. I just set the phone down, face up, and watched it go dark. It wasn't the first time she'd reached out since I'd left. There'd been texts, "Can we talk?" or "I miss you," scattered over the weeks, each one a little shorter, a little less sure. I hadn't replied to those either. Not because I was angry. I wasn't, not anymore, but because I didn't know what to say. That night, though, this message felt different. Final, maybe. Like she was laying it all out, one last card on the table, hoping I'd pick it up. I didn't hate her for it. Part of me even believed her. She probably did see it now, after everything, after Damon's words at the dinner cracked her world open. But seeing it now wasn't enough. Not for me. I leaned back, the couch creaking under me, and thought about what she was asking. Trying again, rewinding to what we had, or maybe to something new. But some things you don't rewind, you can't. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water, the tap running steady and cold. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of traffic outside. I liked it that way, simple mine. I thought about the old place, the one I'd shared with her, with its cluttered counters and her mugs always in the sink. I thought about the years there, the way I'd come home from work, janitor shifts or Corvia meetings, didn't matter, and slip into the background of her life. She'd talk about her day, her family, her plans, and I'd listen, nodding, keeping it easy. I'd pay the bills, hers, her parents', Claire's, and never ask for anything back. I thought that's what made us work, me being steady, her being bright. But it didn't work. It just kept me small, and her blind, until the truth came out and she couldn't look away. I took the glass back to the couch, sat down, and picked up the phone again. The message was still there, waiting. I still love you. I didn't doubt she meant it in her way. Harper wasn't cruel. She wasn't out to hurt me. She just built a life where I didn't fit, not the real me, and when that fell apart, she didn't know what to do. I remembered her standing in the kitchen that weekend, tears in her eyes, saying she was scared I wouldn't match her family's picture. She tried to protect that picture, not me, and I let her because I didn't want the fight. But love that only shows up after the curtain's pulled back isn't love, it's convenience. She didn't love me when I was the janitor, the quiet guy she could hide. She loved me now because someone else said I was worth it. And that wasn't enough. I set the phone down again, this time face down, and closed the book. I didn't need to answer her, not tonight, maybe not ever. I'd spent too long waiting for her to see me, to stand by me, to choose me over the shiny world she wanted. And when she didn't, I'd chosen myself. This place, the bright walls, the hardwood floors, the mornings where I woke up to my own quiet, was proof of that. I didn't need her to try again, because I wasn't trying to fix what we'd had. I was done fixing things for her, done carrying her family's weight, done being the guy she could tuck away. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city, lights blinking, steady and alive. I felt steady too, rooted in a way I hadn't been before. I thought about the past, those years of nodding along, of letting her decide what I was. The lake house payments, the internet bills, Claire's loans, all gone now, canceled with a few taps on my phone, and I didn't miss them. I didn't miss the dinners I wasn't invited to, the way her mom's voice would tighten when she said my name, the way Claire would smile without really looking at me. I didn't miss Harper's excuses, her half-truths, the way she'd kiss my cheek and leave me behind. I'd given them everything I had: time, money, silence, and they'd taken it without giving anything back. Now I was taking it back, piece by piece, building something new. Not out of spite, not to prove a point, just for me. The phone stayed silent, no more buzzes, no more pleas. I walked to the bedroom, turned off the lamp, and lay down, the sheets cool against my skin. My name's Julian Marsh. I'm not a janitor, not just that, anyway. I'm not a disappointment, not someone to hide. I'm the guy who built Corvia Systems, who walks into work and owns it, who lives in a place that feels like his own. I'm not perfect. I've got my flaws, my quiet days, my doubts, but I'm seen now, by me if no one else. That's what matters. Harper's message didn't change that. Her love, coming late like this, didn't pull me back. I didn't need it to. I'd found my peace, my worth, and it wasn't tied to her anymore. I closed my eyes, the city's hum fading into the background, and let it go. Not with anger, not with a fight, just with the calm of knowing I was done. She could love me, she could see me, she could want me back, but it wouldn't rewind what I'd learned. I wasn't going back to being her rock, her shadow, her secret. I was moving forward, one step at a time, into a life I'd made for myself. And as I drifted off, the weight of her words slipped away, light as air, leaving me with nothing but the sound of my own breathing, steady, free, mine.